Hello and welcome to the Q&A edition of the CFB Super Show. I'm your host, Walter Waddell, aka Deuce85. The show is, of course, brought to you by the world famous FTN Network. All kinds of content on FTN Daily, all kinds of content on FTN Bets. You want to get there if you're not already a member of the FTN community. What are you doing? You got to get there. You got to sign up. Use my code DUB for a little extra something special. Get yourself a discount there on that content. We also have PrizePicks trackers. We have betting trackers. We have shows. We have written content. We have pro sports. We have collegiate sports. We have esports. We have every single type of money-making opportunity when it comes to sports betting, daily fantasy, season-long fantasy, and of course, dynasty fantasy as well. Hope you guys are doing well this morning. It is a bright and early morning for me. Been up for 3 hours now. It is 8 a.m. on the West Coast, ready to ride out. We have that game here in four and a half hours. The Huskies versus the Ducks. That is a big one. Heisman watch there between Michael Penix and Bo Nix. No Bo. Yes, Penix. You have a lot of fantasy goodness in that one. That is going to be one of the more stackable games on the slate. A lot of high-priced guys. Can't exactly just shove them all in. There's a ton of injury news to monitor, so we'll cycle through that. And there has been questions rolling in through my DMs, the Discord, and on Twitter or X, whatever you prefer to call it. So I will get through those as well. And if you're watching the show live, thank you for your support. Make sure you interact in the chat. Ask your questions, comments, concerns, anything that you'd like to say. I do look at that often. And we will make sure to get those addressed. All right. So let's start it off here. Let's get going with the slate. A lot of stuff. I told you, hey, we're cruising in this week, but you just know Saturday morning we're going to wake up. There's going to be news galore that we're going to have to deal with. Probably the most relevant thing that we need to pay attention to right now is the status of the Ohio State Buckeyes, being that is one of the earlier games on the slate. We have some stuff later, and a lot of our exposure happens to be in the Kansas, Oklahoma State, Oregon, Washington, Texas A&M, Tennessee games. Like, there's a lot to like in those games. Luckily for us, those are in the latter portion of the slate, so we have some time to, kind of decipher and see what happens with those. The relevant news here, though, is Ohio State, TreVeyon Henderson, once again, questionable, considered a game time decision. Mayan Williams, who has just been completely phased out, will be out. That is confirmed that he will not be playing today against Purdue. That is no longer a matter of, hey, is he out? Yes, he is out. If Henderson can't go, Chip Trainum sitting there at 5K after carrying, the rock 20 times last week against Maryland, had just 61 yards, a 3.1 YPC, did score a touchdown, also caught a pass for negative yardage, which is not great, but 22 touches when you count his targets as well. Only 5K, definitely in play there. Getting a lot of questions. Hey, there's so much expensive guys here. How can I play two quarterbacks? I can't fit Penix and Nix. It's just not possible without kind of punting multiple positions. And that's true. You could look to go to Jordan Travis as well, who I really like, but he's also not super cheap. And I'm not feeling like playing Luke Altmaier myself. He just doesn't do it for me, or Hudson Card. These habitual cheap quarterbacks, not going back to Schrader. There's just really only one option, I think, at this point for me. That's to force Penix and Nix in together, or to run 4 running backs, or to run 4 wide receivers, or to run 5 wide receivers, which you don't typically do and don't usually recommend. But I do feel like the upside and the floor is there to only play one quarterback in your lineup. I know it's not typically what you hear from your content providers, but we here at FTN aren't afraid to, go against the grain. And that lineup works for us quite a bit. In fact, one of our longtime members, Mighty Hams, actually took down a tournament for $3,000 last week with 4 running backs. So that was not a week that I thought 4 running backs was all that viable, but he proved that it is, and he is a very valued member of the house of 4 running backs. If Henderson is out, I think we just go ahead and plug Chip Trayanum in. Weather concerns and got to protect Mr. McCord. We know Emeka Egbuka is out as well for Ohio State. Marvin Harrison at 8.5. Can't even, GPP lineup, sure, but I don't know how we're going to fit him into a main build with all the other guys that we want to play. There is chatter from the Ohio State conglomerate on socials about Xavier Johnson getting his chance. I personally really like the true freshman Carnell Tate. I wish he would be priced like Rashad Owens and he was the one at 3.5 because I think I would pull the trigger on Tate. Like, I feel pretty excited. Like, I need to check the anytime touchdown props. We'll do that here before we get out of here a little bit later. But I think Carnell Tate's going to score a touchdown today. I really do. The fact of the matter is the kid has a ton of talent. Ohio State, they're a bit of the WRU, right? And McCord has been just talking about this kid a lot, just chatting about how great he's going to be. And this Purdue defense is horrible everywhere, front, secondary. So Tate can definitely do some damage here. But they did go ahead and price him at 4.8, which makes it hard to use because he definitely could, catch one pass, could have 0 fantasy points. He could get the touchdowns. I think he will. Makes it really difficult, though, because we need all the value we can get. And if I'm going to play a sub 5K receiver, and I am, probably 2, maybe even 3, I'm going to go ahead and go over to this other game here with Florida State versus Syracuse where there's other injuries to monitor. But Johnny Wilson is actually going to be out. He's dealing with the issue that, it seemed like he was going to be limited or a decoy. Then it seemed like he wasn't going to play, and then he was back to playing, and now it's official. He is going to be out. So Keon Coleman sitting there at 6.9, an elite GBP play with Jordan Travis. Any Jordan Travis lineup you make, I think you certainly want to have Keon Coleman there. If you can't fit it, you can drop down to Jaheim Bell, who's 4.1. Now, Bell over Carnell Tate is the smart thing to do, or the viable. I shouldn't say smart. It's not stupid. Although sometimes getting stupid does work, in the words of Mac Dre. 4.1 just makes a lot of sense. You got a guy here who was very limited last week. He did play a few snaps. He wasn't out. I know it looked like he was out, but he was on the field. They're going to work him out of the slot a bunch today. Now there's no Wilson. They're going to use Jaheim Bell a lot. I do think this is a Jaheim Bell week, one in which he catches somewhere between 5 to 8 passes, does eclipse 80 yards, and he does score a touchdown as well, possibly even 2, like he did back in week 1 against LSU. They do give him carries, so he is used in a myriad of ways, but 4-1 against a suddenly, dumpster fire Syracuse squad, at least defensively and offensively, I should say, after last week, Jaheim Bell now becomes one of the primary value options for me. Okay. Give me a second here, guys, because I'm trying to direct lineups at the same time. So if I keep looking off to the side here, it's not because I'm not trying to give you, eye contact. It's not that I'm nervous or shy. It's not that I think you're too pretty this morning, although, Jamie, you are looking pretty this morning. Alex, you as well. But I just want to make sure that I am not missing anything with my my lineups here. So, yeah, Jaheim Bell. Keon Coleman, not a priority, but a premium play, a little ice cream after dinner. It's not something that you do every night, but you had a special occasion perhaps, or you had a good day at work, you got a raise, something good happened and you want to treat yourself. Keon Coleman is that way to treat yourself for sure. But Jaheim Bell is where we're going to go here. Clicking him into the main lineup right now. All right. So if that Travion Henderson news comes out while I'm jabbering here, feel free to pop it in the chat there, and I'll make sure to address it. I'm also looking at it. Jalen McMillan is expected to play. I've been hearing the coach speak, local media. I'm a Pacific Northwest guy, right? Like, I'm there a good portion of the year. And even when I'm in California for the other half, like I'm PNW all the way. The Huskies, come on. The lot of the coach speak makes me very nervous. Typically when you see or when you hear so much coach speak about, this guy's ready to go. He's going to, we're going to have him in there for 80% of the snaps. We're going to pepper him with targets. And then he's, just out there to be a decoy or barely playing. I'm a little nervous about Jalen McMillan. The way people are talking about him being an absolute lock, it frightens me. I get that he's $900 cheaper than Rome, our man Rome Odunze, but there's some risk involved here. instead of risking it in my main, I'm bouncing down for another $900 discount, which would be to Jalen Poke. Poke's not going to be affected negatively with Jalen McMillan around, because if you go back and you look at weeks 1, 2, and 3, McMillan was cold-blooded. 8 catches, 95 yards, 2 touchdowns. 8 catches, 120 yards, and a touchdown. 4 catches, 96 yards, even got a carry in there. Then you look at weeks 1 through 3 for Jalen Poke. 3 catches, 101 yards, a touchdown. 5 catches for 81 yards. Also had a 27-yard rush for a touchdown. And then 5 catches for 118 yards and a touchdown. Now, his first week without McMillan, he caught 8 passes for 127 and 2. Massive ceiling. And then the struggle against Arizona still, even in a down game in which Michael Penix threw for almost 400 yards, Poke had 5 catches for 41 yards. So yes, without McMillan, great, amazing, slate-shattering play. But you're talking about a guy who averaged 22 fantasy points with McMillan in the lineup. So it's kind of puzzling to me to see why people aren't really using Poke this week when you do get such a decent discount. And like literally to the penny, every dollar discount we can get is very important this week. It does harm Jeremy Bernard. I'm seeing a lot of people, asking about Bernard. Without McMillan, he does come back into play. He's one of the fastest players on the team. Like, this kid is super, super fast. You saw it with his rushing touchdown last week, and he gets behind the defense. He's fine at 4.6, but with McMillan, not the greatest. Now, he did have a 13 fantasy point game with Jalen and a 12 fantasy point game, so it's not horrible at 4.6, but you are definitely paying a little bit higher end there on the value side when there's going to be a lot of guys competing for targets here. And the recent emergence of Dylan Johnson in the running game. So that is the quick breakdown there. On the Tennessee side, we already know Brew McCoy, nasty injury. He's done for the year. Dante Thornton is expected back, so there's a bit of value there at 4.3 as well. And somebody to potentially look at. The Utah quarterback situation, Cam Rising not starting or playing it. It sounds like Bryson Barnes is expected to start, not Johnson. Not that we were using any Utah quarterbacks necessarily. It is a great matchup, but Utah just sticking around with all these, this guy, that guy, let's play everybody. It's become very annoying when it comes to them. So that's the quick injury roundup. Let's take a look here. Oh, we're popping in. Favorite running back, just any site, any price. Devin Neal is the obvious answer, right? I wrote a whole prop article yesterday about his not anytime touchdown prop, but his first touchdown prop. Like I'm super, super confident that Devin Neal is going to score the first touchdown of the game. But if you want like to factor in price and lineup making ease and all these other, this and that, and my formula, the Waddell family formula, Lev Moss is actually my favorite running back. I think Lev Moss is going to absolutely wreck it today. I think Lev Moss is being overlooked by the masses today. I think Lev Moss is going to score like 25 fantasy points at a sub 6K price on DK. And he's going to be like well under-owned, under 30%, where people are just going to whiff and they're going to wonder what the hell happened. Why did they miss that? And part of that's because the whole industry's on Anaya Smith, and he's cheap and he's good and he's definitely a very solid play. I don't want to play Smith and Moss together, although it's fine. I'd rather just, bet on the touchdowns from Moss or the yardage there or one or the other. And since it's sort of leverage from the rest of the industry, that's why I'm on Moss. So he's actually my favorite running back on the slate. I'm big on Devin Neal too, who is another guy that the industry is not being able to afford because of the Oregon receivers, because of the Huskies receivers. So we might get Neal and Moss at lower ownership because I think people are prioritizing Ollie Gordon today at the running back spot. Hit the like button. Thanks, Don Play. Watched the show the other day. I forgot to put timestamps on last Thursday's show. Sorry. I know I say I'm going to do it every week and then I forget. Didn't see your picks for Colorado State versus Boise State and UAB versus UTSA. I like the Colorado State spread there. I'll have to take a look and see what that is. And then I like the UTSA side of that one. Huskies, let's go, Alex. You still like Poke the best from Washington? Yes. Xavier Johnson, the heart of the Buckeyes. Tate is the future. Yeah, Xavier Johnson getting a ton of love from the Buckeyes faithful on socials. Damn, I wanted to have that done before the show. Weather here in Michigan screams Corum. Yeah, probably, man. Donovan Edwards, anyone? Donovan Edwards? I mean, come on. Come on. Somebody asking about the early slate for FanDuel. Let me pull that up. FanDuel, I got to give it to them. They got some pretty decent slates lately. The main's a little excessive, being all day. Not the biggest fan of that, although I do like all day slates for college basketball, oddly enough. And then they have this early slate that's got some fun teams on it, right? Like I think James Madison is on this slate. There's some really, really fun options. Okay. Favorite quarterback, wide receiver pairing on FanDuel for early slate that is not FSU. Okay, so he doesn't want me to. He's probably already playing FSU, guys. That's fair. So let's see what we're working with here. We'd love to use Jordan McLeod of James Madison. He's a dog, man. He's awesome. Let's go Davis Brin, who's sitting there at 9.8 on FanDuel, and one of his receivers, possibly multiple, such as Derwin Burgess, who is 8.4, and Caleb Hood, who is 9K. I would just take Burgess there if you can't play both. I certainly like both. I might even run like a trio there on the FanDuel early. Admittedly, I'm not playing the FanDuel early slate, but if I were, I would be running that Brin trio with his two receivers. I think they're going to put together quite a bit of scoring and kind of smack JMU around. There's a betting opportunity there. All right, so that answers that. Can you talk top 5 punt plays for you? Yes. So Rashad Owens, just because Deshaun Stribling is out, Owens stepped up, had snap increase, target increase, usage increase, catch increase, everything. So at 3.5, he's pretty obvious. I think he'll be relatively high owned just because it's out of necessity to have all these cheap guys that to make our lineups work. So you got to have Owens in there. Another pot, and then Jaheim Bell, which I don't know your definition of punt, like under 4.5, like I'm not quite sure what it is, but we'll say under 4.5 for ease of this. So Jaheim Bell, Caden Fegan, who sits there at 4.5 from Illinois, don't like him at all. Don't like the Illinois team at all outside of Juice Williams, but he's 4.5. He's cheap. There's really he's like the last running back standing in that group. And again, out of necessity, people are going to need value, and they're probably going to use a lot of him for that reason. If I cheat a little bit, I can say Donovan Edwards at 4.9. It just, if it is a weather game and Corum's going to run a lot like Edwards theoretically should. Anaya Smith sitting there at 4.9. Jaden Bray at 4.9 as well. Carnell Tate at 4.8. There's several options here that are just really interesting to me. As far as anyone else down there, there is another Oregon player in Ferguson. Let me just double check his price here, because 3.9. So you can get a 3.9K Terrence Ferguson on DK as a way to get exposure to the Oregon-Washington game without breaking the bank. Yes, he doesn't get the same level of usage that these other guys get. He's 6th on the team in targets with 17. He's behind Bucky Irving and the other 4, Treshaun Holden, Gary Bryant, Tez Johnson, and Troy Franklin. But he's been decent. 15 catches, 129 yards, and a touchdown. I think both defense are really going to try and keep things in front of them, which does mean Ferguson could get a nice amount of targets today and be a little bit of a PPR warrior, possibly a little bit of touchdown upside there as well. So not really a lot of people talking about him, because I'm really looking to use like Treshaun Holden, because he's another PPR guy that, catches if it's going to be, non-deep ball, short route, stuff like that. Holden definitely benefits from that. Somebody that can get us, 12 to 15 fantasy points at 4.6. But the more I've had time to look at it this morning and overnight, I do think Terrence Ferguson becomes fairly valuable as a way to get this Oregon game, and possibly just playing Poke and Ferguson together, which sounds mighty contrarian. I think that that's a perfect way to get exposure to that game. So those are kind of the myriad of punt plays that I'm looking at there. Cycle back here. Any 3K guys worth playing? Well. Let's see. I guess it depends on your risk tolerance. Like, are you okay taking a straight bagel because you were able to pay up elsewhere? That's something that you have to really to determine for yourself, because the pricing on DraftKings, while not perfect, this week is the best it's been in terms of, hey, they're not just pricing guys way too low or stupid low. Like, there's actually a bit of thinking that has to be done here, and you can't just click in all the best players. So I'm not even going to try and play you out and say, yeah, this 3K guy, he's really going to step up. We got ourselves a sneak play here, because what's going to happen is people are going to end up playing his whoever it is, and then he's going to end up with like 12 snaps and doing nothing. It's be like, why did I play him? So I do not have a 3K play for you. I am terribly sorry. There's just, and this is something that I try to look at as well, because I know people are looking for cheapies. It's just not materializing. There is guys between 3.5 and 4K that we've talked about that you can use. There's also guys from 4K to 5K quite loaded. If you want a player from the Hammer game, for example, at 4.3K from Iowa, should be in the top pump plays as well. For Chase there, Eric All, he has been really solid all season long, but with Deacon Hill last week, he caught 5 passes for almost 100 yards and a touchdown. Back-to-back weeks with a touchdown. He is really getting peppered with targets as much as possible in an Iowa offense as you can. He's been very, very good. So that's another cheapie that you can definitely look at, and I have no problem using. What's up, Day? What players do you like on FanDuel? There's quite a bit. Let me pull back up the main slate here. Just waiting any minute for this Trey Henderson news. All right. Jaden Daniels, number one. I know that he's expensive as hell on FanDuel, but I'm really just – the rest of the season, my motto for Jaden Daniels slates is I'm going to pay any price. I'm going to use him against any opponent, and I'm going to start all of my lineups with Jaden Daniels. It just no longer makes sense to fade him. It's been a while since we had a quarterback, not terribly long, maybe like a season and a half, to where we had this quarterback was like, every time he's on the slate, Justin Fields, you got to play him, like, Tua. Like, there's just quarterbacks that you just can't afford to fade, and you end up plugging them in regardless of price. This happens in college basketball too, the year Zion Williamson was around. So I do think Jaden Daniels has arrived to the level of, fading him just hurts. So you saw what he did last week. He got off to a little bit of a slower start for like a second, and then he ended up just pouring it on. The rushing upside, the accuracy with his throws, the rapport he has with Malik Neighbors, he's just way too good. I also love Luther Burden. I know another expensive player. FanDuel offers us a little bit more value than DraftKings, so paying 9.6 for Burden, it's a bit much. He's on the road against Kentucky, but I'm expecting legitimately 18 to 20 targets for Burden. Like, he's just getting it, so easily and so concentrated from Brady Cook that it doesn't matter. The defense knows he's getting the ball, and they're still not able to stop him. Love my man Ollie Gordon on FanDuel. I think there is a lot of good running backs. Lev Moss at 6'8" is another guy. I mean, I'm really high on him on DraftKings, but certainly high on him on FanDuel at 6'8" as well. Let me go down. There's a bunch in the 6 to 7K range. So let me read off a few to you that I do like. And obviously from North Carolina, Tez Walker, his price has gone up, but not enough. He's almost an auto play there. The Miami receivers, which we're going to talk about them on the night slate right up a little bit later for DraftKings, but they're on the all-day FanDuel. Colby Young especially, he's 6'2" there on DraftKings. He's like sub 5K. Really like me some Colby Young. I did get some questions about the Miami running back situation. Donald Chaney sitting there at 6'2" against North Carolina. It does seem like Don Chaney is starting to separate himself a little bit. Now, this is a crowded running back room, between Allen, Parrish, Fletcher. It's tough. Chaney's only 3.9 on DraftKings, by the way. Now, Fletcher, he's got a foot issue, so he's missed, last couple of weeks. I don't know that he's going to be back. He's considered highly questionable. AJ Allen was phased out almost completely, played very few snaps, only 3 carries. And then Parrish, who is typically the main guy, did have 17 carries last week, had 16 carries the game before that, which he had 140 yards, has scored 3 touchdowns in the past 2 games. So he's still going to get work, but he's significantly more expensive than Chaney. Chaney, 24 carries against Georgia Tech. It was just working for him. He was doing really well. He did have a fumble, but they still went to him. The game before that against Temple still ran viciously, had 9 carries, over 60 yards. Hasn't been the touchdown guy that some of the other backs have been, but he's definitely getting somewhere between 7 to 10 touches with regularity. Now there's upside for more. So to answer the question about Chaney or the Miami running back room, I do feel like Chaney is viable and able to be used in a main lineup setting on both DraftKings and FanDuel. So I have no issues there. Also, the Tennessee receivers, Keaton, was my guy, and Squirrel White are both extremely cheap, all things considering. 6.6K for Keaton, Squirrel White 6.3K. I think both of them are very good plays where you can use them with confidence. Anaya Smith is okay there too. And then on the BYU side, the BYU TCU game there, you get Isaac Rex at 6K. Their primary, he's their tight end, but he's their top receiver, getting peppered with targets, a touchdown equity machine, and somebody who can certainly pay off a 6K price tag here, especially against TCU, where their defense has been a very fantasy-friendly group this season thus far. Also, Taj Brooks, who has been phenomenal for weeks now. One of my favorite plays on FanDuel as well. He's 9.2. You're not getting a discount by any means, but I'm all over Taj Brooks. I'm paying up at running back where possible. Really big fan of his, and obviously it's going to be tough because there is so many expensive options. Audrey Castimi, 9.3 is another play that on the night slate of DK we're going to be featuring, going up against the porous USC defense. He's probably going to run for 150 yards, so it gets really tough. But and Amani Bailey, who at TCU side, no Chandler Morris, they're going to feed him the rock. So you really have to make some tough decisions. But on the FanDuel side, Lev Moss, Taj Brooks, Estime, those are all guys I like. Devin Neal might be a little bit hard to get to over there on FanDuel, but those are the guys that I'm really looking at over on FanDuel. My good sir, thanks for the question. Thoughts on Cody Epps, BYU 4,100 on FanDuel? Yeah, the BYU guys are relatively cheap all around. And the matchup is actually pretty decent, honestly. Let's see, just tracking snaps or trying to. He's only had the 1 target because of being banged up. Sorry, I just want to pull up snaps so I can get an accurate picture here of the BYU situation. All right. So Isaac Rex over 90% of snaps, Keanu Hill over 90% of snaps, Darius Lassiter and Chase Roberts over 70% of the snaps, Epps in the game that he was available 37%. Let's just make sure now that he's likely going to be brought along slowly, I don't mind because, FanDuel, you can get away with a couple of lower scores. It really hurts you on DraftKings, especially lately with the way the pricing has been, even though it's improved. So I don't hate that idea. If you've got to read that he's going to be inserted right away and play heavy snaps, I probably would put him somewhere between 25 to 30% of the snaps initially, and go from there. I'd rather play Isaac Rex, though, if you can. And there it is. Trey Henderson is officially out. Not in pads for final pregame and will not play in today's game. So Dallin Hayden, the deep play, and Chip Trainum now becomes a main team play. So this is very, very big news regarding what we're going to do with the rest of our lineup. All right. Sorry. All right. So there you go. So now upgrade Chip Trainum way up. Sorry. I got to do communicating and doing lineups at the same time, so I apologize. But yeah, so now Trainum. So on the priority list here, and the 4 running back lineup certainly comes into play now because I love Devin Neal, Ollie Gordon. I like playing them against each other. Lev Moss is my dude. And then Chip Trainum. So you can get those guys in there with one of the quarterbacks of your choice, whether it's Penix or Bo Nix, one of the Huskies receivers, and then you're probably going to be somewhere between 5K and 6.5K, and that is a solid range for a receiver. Can't quite get to a guy like Keon Coleman, but that does leave you with a Ramel Keaton or a Squirrel White, most likely. Squirrel White going to be chalky, Ramel Keaton not. I'm looking at a lineup now where I plug in Keaton. That looks pretty damn good. Show lineup wise, like a Neil Gordon, Moss, Trainum, Jalen Pope, Jaheim Bell, one of the Tennessee receivers, and then one of Bo Nix or Michael Penix. That to me seems like a really strong lineup. Yeah, I think that's where I am going to go. Honestly, that feels pretty good to me. Okay. Wow. I'm glad we got that information relatively early, not to the last second, because that would be a struggle. So that's pretty much where our head's at. So I just talked about Miami for you, Craig. Purdue running back. Yeah, so Devin Mockabee, no Tracy. Mockabee is going to get a theoretically the lion's share of the carries. The problem is it's not the best spot at all. He's probably looking at like 20 touches, which is great at 5'2", but he's probably going to be churning out like 3.5 yards per carry. He might score. He does get reception, so he's certainly in play. But I just don't know who I would play him over at this point. Chip Trainum is a much better play than him in my mind, so I wouldn't be going there personally. All right, let's pull up the prop bets. So the prop betting article I had Devin Neal first touchdown score. Basically, in 4 of his 6, he's played roughly 80% of the snaps on the first drive, gotten 60% of the touches on the first drive, and he scored the first touchdown in 2 of those 6 games. Plus 450. It's worth throwing a little bit of coin at. I'm not suggesting that you put your whole bankroll on a first touchdown score prop by any means. But if you're looking for a confidence level, if we go back in our DeLorean and we travel to week 0 when San Jose State played USC, and I was like telling anyone who listened, hey, there's only going to be a handful of times this season where we get this great of odds and we're this confident in a prop. I'm not to that level of, hey, this is the anytime touchdown prop for Nick Nash, but I'm like one little peg below that with this Devin Neal first touchdown score. I feel so confident that he's the first one of the game to score a touchdown that I've probably put more than I should on that prop, but I do. And then there's a few places for this, but the alt rushing yards on Lev Moss, DK's official number 66.5. To me, I think he's a 100-yard rusher today, so I just went ahead and hit the alt rushing prop of 80+ rushing yards, which is plus 150. Get a little bit of value on our money there instead of a minus 115. Not a huge difference by any means, but I'll take that value for sure. I just feel very, very confident in Le'Veon Moss hitting that 100-yard mark. So 80+ feels like a pretty safe bit of work there for me. PrizePicks. For those of you still grinding that out, Jaden Daniels, the combo yards, have we done really well with him. Over 346.5 passing plus rushing yards. He's going to give us roughly 50 rushing yards. He's going to give us, 300 passing at minimum. Just going to hit that number pretty frequently. Bo Nix over 293.5 passing yards. I do think he'll run a little bit today, but he's probably a lock for 300+. Ollie Gordon over 74.5 rushing yards. Both the Jayhawks and the Cowboys rush defense is giving up well over 140 yards per game. Gordon being the primary option now, kind of pushing the other guys aside in that backfield. Seems like another player inevitably going to hit 100+ rushing yards. So that is the 3 primary PrizePicks plays. They changed a little bit from the show, but those are the 3 that I'm getting majority of my play over there on. Betting wise, not just props, but let's look at some lines, see what we got at this moment, because I don't want to give you guys old lines that I entered in a few days ago if they're different. So let's get the most up-to-date current lines that we can. All right, so first, the Washington Oregon game. Most of the place you can get total at 66.5 or 67. There's just no way it doesn't hit 80+. There's a little bit of chatter of, oh my God, it's raining. What are we going to do? Well, Seattle, they're used to the rain. A wet field is fine. The main thing we want to be worried about is those games in which the wind is going crazy, because that's going to affect a hell of a lot more than the rain. And it's just, at this point, rain. Unless it's a monsoon in the Pacific Northwest, we don't even really call it rain, and we just make fun of people who do call it rain. Oddly enough, though, people who have lived here a long time still drive like ass in the rain every time. It's just unfathomable. I can't understand it. So that's the total. I just feel like that's way too good. I like the over 54.5 in the Tennessee Texas A&M game as well. That one feels a little bit low. I think both of those teams score in the 30s. I think Penn State, absolutely. If you're feeling like you want a little bit of, you want a big favorite and you want to take a spread that you're maybe looking to parlay or something, Penn State's minus 42 against UMass. I mean, it's going to be 55-3. So if you want a big favorite to throw in there in some of your other plays, Penn State minus 42. I know it's an exorbitant amount of points to give, but it's Penn State. It's UMass. You know what to do. Wake Forest plus 1.5 versus Virginia Tech. I actually low-key love that. Virginia Tech. Wake Forest is not the Sam Hartman's Wake Forest. We'll start with that. But Virginia Tech's rush defense is awful. Their defense in general is awful. I like Wake Forest here. As good as Kieran Jones has looked for fantasy purposes, the Virginia Tech team is just ailing. They do not look good whatsoever. Now, Don Plays had asked me about 2 games in particular that I had mentioned on Thursday's show and I never got back to, but Colorado State versus Boise State. Colorado State plus 8.5 point favorites. I actually really like this game to be competitive. It's a high total, 60.5. Both teams have been really sharp on offense. Both teams have given up points. I like Colorado State to not only cover at home, but possibly even win. Life after Hank Bachmeier has been decent for Boise State, but Taylor Green, he's kind of been hit or miss. And then you have the UAB versus UTSA game. I don't know what the hell's going on with UAB. When I watch their games, they just, they got some great running backs, but they look awful. UTSA hasn't looked that much better, but I do like them to win by 10+ here. They're -9 against UAB. That is another one that I am sticking into the tracker in a little bit here for one of my featured plays. It just seems like a very good spot. Another one, NC State +3 versus Duke. Riley Leonard is ailing. NC State's secondary is strong. NC State in general is looking to kind of pop Duke in the mouth here. So I like NC State to cover that for sure, and possibly even win outright. There is the UCLA Oregon State total of 54. I like the under there. These are DraftKings odds, the under 54. Both defenses are solid. UCLA has been involved in some real grinder games, 14-7, 21-10, stuff like that. So 54 seems a little bit too high for me in this environment for those two teams, most certainly. 56.5 total for North Carolina versus Miami. Drake May is based as hell. Miami is based as hell. Tyler Van Dyke is getting it. He's got a trio of receivers, although one of them's banged up. They've got a running game that can certainly pelt North Carolina. North Carolina has just a trio themselves of wide receivers. They've got great running back play. They've got a dual threat quarterback. Just keep coming back to that Miami Texas A&M game from a few weeks back. They can get into shootouts, and they have the offense to keep up. North Carolina has the offense to keep up. I actually have this game right around 61. So 56.5 over. I am definitely on board with that. I am on board with Notre Dame minus 2.5 against USC. USC's defense sucks. There's just no other way to put it. It sucks. Notre Dame's defense is very good. They have a running back that is going to terrorize USC. And I'm really hoping that Notre Dame can keep Caleb Williams to a moderate stat line, because I think volume-wise, the offense is great. Don't get me wrong. So he's going to do some things, but if Notre Dame can keep him at like 200 yards, 250, 2 touchdowns, an interception, no rushing touchdowns. Michael Penix throws for 500 today and 5. Heisman race, baby. Michael Penix starts to usurp him. Then the game versus USC in November. Let's go. So that's what I'm hoping for there. All right. One final check-in here, and then we'll get going. Ooh, Rocket Sanders is out for Arkansas. Hey, okay. What does that do for us? Let's see here. Let me just verify that before. Okay. Developing story. Arkansas running back Rocket Sanders will not play today versus Alabama. Yeek. They were already going to be struggling. That is not good. Theoretically, KJ Jefferson's going to have to do a lot, but the running backs who had been getting the touches without Rocket, Rashad Dubinian, he's 4.7 on DraftKings. He is going to get more work. AJ Green, the most common football name in the world, it seems like. And then at a time, Dominic Johnson, who really hasn't been doing anything, but will probably pilfer a few carries. That somebody asked me about a 3K play earlier. Dom Johnson is 3K. If you absolutely are desperate and you love the rest of your lineup, Dom Johnson will probably get like 3 to 5 touches today. He's not going to do anything with them, but all right, that's the story there. FanDuel value, please. You FanDuelers, man. All right, so here. I'm going to do it one more time. Should have just kept this up. There are a decent amount of sub 7K players on FanDuel. So I don't know how cheap you really need to go there. I know there's some expensive guys, but start with Lev Moss at 6'8". I consider him to be one of the stronger values. Train him at 5'8", now that there's no Trey Henderson. The Tennessee receivers are under 7K, 6'3" for Squirrel White. That's a very strong price for him. I think that you want to play one of the Tennessee guys today. I'm very confident there. Tez Walker of North Carolina at 6K. He's a core lock for me. I don't see any reason to suddenly want to fade him. He's just been, all this hype around him, and he was very involved last week. Look for him to play a ton. Let's see. And Kobe Young of Miami, who I'm very high on at 6'2". Don Chaney at 6'2" as well. Devin Mockabee at 6'1" will theoretically get all the touches for Purdue in the backfield, even though it's a terrible matchup. And then Isaac Rex, the tight end for BYU, who is a touchdown machine from last year. This year, he's getting targeted a whole hell of a lot. And lastly, for Syracuse, Donovan Brown at 5'8". So those are some options on FanDuel for you on the value side of things. All right. I'm getting hammered with DMs. I will answer those in a bit. I think that's a good time to wrap it up. We got 13 minutes here. Going to finalize some lineups. Appreciate everybody who continues to support us on the show, at the site. We will be back next week, next Thursday, 9 p.m. PST, midnight EST, for the main slate breakdown. There's weekday college football all week next week, starting with Tuesday again. Just a reminder, there will be written content for every single main slate, whether that's a Tuesday or a Saturday or a Wednesday, etc. There will be a written content for that and 2 shows a week. College basketball starts in under 25 days. There will be daily slates for that and a weekly show for college basketball as well. You're about to see my face on your screen a whole lot more as college basketball starts. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Best of luck today. Let's show the industry what time it is with the 4 running back builds and all the green screens in the world. Reconvene here next week, same time, same place. Peace.